We've reached the end of another year, another reading season of damn good horror books, so I want to talk about some of the best horror reads I read this year. Most of these books I checked out from my library, and I saved so much money this year by checking out books from the library, so I highly suggest you do the same, because our libraries are there for us, guys, especially during the holiday season. The first book I read this year that I really enjoyed is Stephen King's The Stand. What is there left to say about this book? It's many people's favorites. This is an epic tale about a group of people who are trying to rebuild life after this plague takes over it. It's filled with just the best character work I've ever read. You will fall in love with most of the characters in this book. You'll fear and despise many of the other characters in this book, and you'll just be gripped. On every page, you will want to know what happens to them on this journey, but it is a long one. You will feel like you actually went on this long journey with them, and it's a classic for a reason. I really liked it. I didn't love it. I won't reread it, but I'm glad I read it. Now, this is a book I never see anybody talking about. It's called Old Wounds by Logan Ashley Kisner, and this is about two trans teens who embark on a road trip, and their car breaks down in the middle of this shitty little town, and this town sacrifices girls to a monster in the woods, and these teens get wrapped up in it. It's such an interesting story for many reasons, because on one end it is such a fun like backwoods monster horror, and on the other end you're getting a glimpse into the lives of these teens who are trans and how they live with their transness and how they have to fight constantly to prove that their transness is real, that they exist. And you get a lot of backstory of the struggles they've had to overcome, the really horrific things that they had to deal with, and also see how their transness coincides with this group of shitty people in this little town and the monster that they tried to sacrifice them to. So there's a lot going on in this, and I thought the author did a fantastic job at navigating it all and making it for a really fun story with really dark and depressing moments. The Unworthy by Agustina Bastarrica was my first 5-star read of the year. This is centered on a woman who's living in a convent in kind of like this dystopian world, and the convent is just rough. The women in there are kind of pitted against each other. They're overrun by these like general sergeant type nuns who don't let them like do anything. They can't really live. They're very kind of suppressed in every urge they have. And then one day, our lead character meets somebody outside the walls and brings them in. And they develop an interesting kinship, and things go a little crazy from there. I really liked the way this story unfolds because it is told through our main protagonist's journal entries, and we get a lot of her backstory as well leading up to that point, and we just see how this place has kind of transformed her and made her who she is. And when she meets this other person and she really lets love into her heart and she's really allowing herself to express herself, she becomes better. She becomes a better person. She becomes more human again. And it's just such an interesting journey to watch. And I really enjoyed this one. I think a lot of people were mixed on this one, but it worked for me. It's also short and quick. When the Wolf Comes Home by Nat Cassidy is another 5-star read for me. I was completely blown away by this book because it was nothing like I expected. The story centers on a woman who's she's kind of down on her luck. She's working at a diner one night, and she heads home from work after an incident at work, and she finds this little boy like cowering in the bushes outside of her house. She takes him in, and then soon she hears this like creature brutally slaughtering everyone in her apartment, and he comes for her and the kid, and she flees with the kid, and soon they're on the run, and she realizes or soon discovers that she is on the run with this kid from his father. And that's not even the craziest part. You think that's the craziest part of this story, but it's not, because the story has some interesting twists and turns throughout that I was not expecting, and it's such an interesting look at this woman and her relationship with this little boy. You will fall for them. You will just want them to be okay, and all of these outlandish, ridiculous things are happening all around them. It gets so creative and it reminded me of The Twilight Zone, one of the episodes, and it has an ending that felt like it punched me in the face. I was so upset, but I loved every moment of this wild, wild ride. I love Nat Cassidy. I love him, okay? So I'm gonna read whatever he writes. Victorian Psycho is another 5-star read for me. This is one I didn't expect to read, but I devoured it in like a day, I feel like, because it's such a quick read, and the story is about this governess who is sent to this home to care for these 2 children, and she's a psycho, okay? So you get into her inner thoughts, which are very dark, and you see how she kind of manipulates the people around her, how she's kind of doing, no, not kind of, she is doing awful things all around her, and it leads up to some interesting revelations. I thought it was funny. The main protagonist is doing horrible things, but it's done in a silly way. Like, there's humor in what she's doing, so I laughed out loud at several moments in this book, which sounds weird and I was not expecting, but I loved it because it's very like satirical, and it felt smart, and it took this trope and changed it a little. It spiced it up a little, and I loved it. The Staircase in the Woods by Chuck Wendig was such an interesting read. I think it's perfect if you are a person who likes creepypasta. This is about a group of friends who reunite in their adulthood to kind of celebrate one of their friends, and in their teenage years, there was an incident where one of their friends disappeared. So when they reunite, it brings up old memories. And there's a staircase in the woods. Okay, they discover a staircase in the woods, and do they climb it? You bet your sweet ass they climb those stairs, because the book is called The Staircase in the Woods. And what they find on the other end is, it's crazy. This one is very surreal. It's haunting. There's a lot of interesting stuff happening with the characters. You get to explore their dynamics in the past and in the present, and you get to see all the shit they've gone through together and separately, like the trauma that they've had to overcome, and how The Staircase in the Woods preys on the most horrific things that have happened to them, and it preys on them through their mind and the way that they think about themselves, and it's such a dark, moving journey, and I really liked it. I thought it was a very well done story. It was a little long at times for me, where it kind of got repetitive, but I loved the whole concept. I think he really captured that weird creepypasta vibe of the story very well, where nothing makes sense, and it's just uncanny, and you feel uneasy throughout the whole book. Black Flame by Gretchen Felker Martin is another 5-star read for me, which is, again, a surprise to me because I didn't like this author's last book. This is about a woman who is very repressed. She's a film archivist, and she gets tasked with restoring this video that has some interesting stuff to it. It's a historic film with a lot of interesting elements to it, and as she's restoring it, things from the film start kind of infecting her mind, and make her start questioning everything. And you learn a lot about this character. They're not very likable. They've gone through a lot of stuff, and you see what has led them to this point, and you're just watching them kind of try to break free of the restraints that everyone around them has placed them under, and become their own person and be who they desperately want to be. And you see how repression can really just destroy a person if they're not allowed to be who they want to be. And I just really enjoyed it. I thought it was creepy and weird. Some of the stuff didn't make sense to me, but I was on that weird journey. I was having a blast, and it gets gross. There's bodily fluids, which I hate. I don't like bodily fluid stuff, okay, Gretchen? But I'll let it slide because the story was just really interesting. I really enjoyed following this character and seeing where they ended up, and I think more people need to read it. Dear Laura, I finally read this one. This is from author Gemma Armour, or I actually listened to it, and I was pleasantly surprised by this. It has pen pal vibes, and again, creepypasta energy, or Let's Not Meet, Reddit No Sleep. It's about a young woman whose best friend, was kidnapped when they were kids, and ever since then, she's been receiving letters from somebody who claims to be the kidnapper, and they're basically taunting her throughout her life. And they start making her do things. She doesn't go to the police about it, and they strike up this really dark and disturbing relationship, and it all leads up to an interesting finale. The story is dark, it's very heavy, and it's sad. It's quick. Thank God it's quick, because I don't know if I could have dealt with a full-length story of this, because it's just messed up, and it almost feels like it could be real, like someone could actually do this to another person, and that's the kind of horror that really gets under my skin. So I was really impressed by this one. It made me uncomfortable. It's just, the idea that somebody is taunting you, and of course, like, who wouldn't want to know what happened? Not knowing the answer to something is horrific. Like, it will eat away at you, and this book really shows that, and how far somebody is willing to go for the truth. The Autumn Springs Retirement Home Massacre by Philip Fracassi. I gave this one 4 stars, but I loved this one. I listened to this on audiobook, and it's narrated by January Lavoie, who did The Diviners. She is fantastic. Like, she puts on a fantastic show. This one is about an elderly woman who is living at a retirement facility. It's kind of a higher end luxury type retirement facility, and one day somebody starts killing off the residents of this community one by one. No one really believes our protagonist, who suspects that it's a killer. Because of the way the killings are happening, they're thinking, oh, it's just an old person dying of age. Like, the story really highlights how the elderly are treated in society, how they're kind of locked away and kind of brushed to the side, and nobody really takes them seriously. They're kind of treated like children when they get older, and their deaths are just kind of ruled as, you know, they're old. So this one, there's so many interesting things happening, but it's also a fantastic slasher set in an entirely different demographic that we do not see, like, ever. So watching this killer kill these people in horrific, disturbing ways, like, the kills are disturbing and they're sad because you really connect with all of the characters in this book, and just watching them or listening or reading them go through these things is just, it's horrifying and sad. And so seeing a final girl who is a senior citizen is just so cool. She's so badass, and I loved this one. I think it's such a unique spin on the slasher genre, and if you like slashers, please read this one, because you will get all of the slasher energy and vibes that you need. Like, they do not hold back with the kills. Play Nice by Rachel Harrison was a really fun read to me. Not her best, but I really enjoyed reading it. I thought it was better than her last book. This is about a young woman whose mother dies, and she leaves their childhood home, which is supposedly haunted. Her lead character and her sisters never had a relationship with their mother past a certain point, because they were under the impression that their mother was crazy and that all of the stuff they experienced in childhood was, like, at her hands. So our protagonist moves into this house to flip it, and she starts to question if her mom really was telling the truth. So it's just an interesting story about relationships, family dynamics, and family trauma, and how people deal with things or don't deal with things, and how everyone has their own personal demons. Here Lies a Vengeful Bitch by Cody Crowley is a fantastic YA horror, and it's about this young girl who wakes up one day in the cemetery and she realizes that she's been murdered, and she tries to figure out who killed her throughout this story, and she meets some interesting friends along the way. This was such a fun throwback feel of a read. It felt like something I'd read or watch in the 90s. The characters are teens who aren't perfect. Our lead character has a lot of baggage, and she's both likable and unlikable, so I like that about her. I like that she's not perfect and they actually feel like teens, and the mystery itself was really interesting. I loved watching it unfold, and there was a surprising reveal of who the killer was, and I just really enjoyed the journey. And there you have it. Those are some of my favorite reads of 2025. Let me know if you read any of the horror books I talked about in this video. Let me know what were your favorite horror reads of the year. If there's any you recommend, please let me know in the comments down below. And thank you so much for watching, guys. I'll catch you next time. Bye.